Hello everyone. Today we will start chapter number 12, reproduction in plants. The topics which we will cover are reproduction, sexual reproduction, fruits and seed formation, seed dispersal. Now, do you know that for how many years do we live? Our lifespan is just about 60 to 70 years and then we die. But humans are present on earth from thousands of years, not only humans, rest of the animals, plants. So how is this possible? Our lifespan is very short, but still humans, plants, animals are there on earth. This is because of reproduction. So reproduction is the process by which parents give birth to their children, and this is how life exists on earth. This is how there is continuity of life on earth. Like our grandparents gave birth to our parents, now our parents have given birth to us, now we will give birth to our babies. So this is how life goes on. So reproduction is the process by which living organisms produce their own kind. Own kind means mango fruit will produce mango tree only. Okay, if we will plant mango seed in the soil, then it will grow into a mango tree only. So we produce our own kind. Now in this chapter, we will study about plants only, that how plants reproduce. And in class 8, you will study reproduction in animals, that how reproduction takes place in animals. You know the names of different parts of plant. In plant, roots are present, stem, leaves. So these all parts are known as vegetative parts of plant. And one more part is there, flower. Flower is known as reproductive part of a plant because it helps in reproduction. It is involved in reproduction. So now vegetative parts, by this we mean that they are not directly involved in reproduction, they are involved in asexual reproduction. And what is asexual reproduction? We will see in our next topic. Plants have roots, stems and leaves which are called the vegetative parts of the plant. The flowers act as reproductive organs because the flowers have those reproductive cells by which they reproduce. Hence, they represent the reproductive parts of a plant. Now, there are two types of reproduction. First is asexual reproduction. By A, we means one. The type of reproduction in which only single parent is involved. Only one parent gives birth to its offspring, and that is known as asexual reproduction. Whereas in case of sexual reproduction, the other type of reproduction, two parents are involved and they produce their baby. So what is asexual reproduction? When only one parent is involved in reproduction and the offsprings are identical to the parent. Why the offsprings are identical? They are similar, they look alike like their parents because only one parent gave birth. Such reproduction is called asexual reproduction. Now in case of asexual reproduction, we have four types. First, vegetative propagation, budding, fragmentation and spore formation. We will discuss each type one by one. We will start with budding first. Budding is type of asexual reproduction and it is seen in yeast. Yeast is a microorganism and yeast is used in bakeries. You have seen that bread, cakes, they are very fluffy in nature. Even in alcohol, in fermentation, this yeast is used, and this yeast reproduces by the method budding. Now in this what happens? Let's say this is yeast, this is body of yeast, and this is parent. And why we are calling it parent? Because it will give birth to a new individual. Now slowly what will happen to this yeast, to its body? This is body. Now it will start developing an outgrowth on its body, and this outgrowth, this bulge which you can see, it is known as bud. Bud is developed on the body of parent, and slowly it will keep on developing hair, and after some time this is parent yeast, and this bud will detach from the body of parent here. Now this is this bud, it is now detached from the body of parent, and now this bud will grow into a new individual. Now you can see this yeast has given birth to this new individual, that's why I called it parent, and this complete process is known as budding, because buds are developed on the body of parent. Is it clear what is budding? Let's look here. The process in which a bud arises from the parent's body and then gives rise to a new individual is called budding. Yeast, a unicellular organism, produces new yeast cell by budding. You can see this is yeast cell, and these small circles which you can see are buds. Then second type of asexual reproduction is fragmentation. What do you mean by fragments? Parts, pieces. Have you seen that green layer over the surface of lakes and ponds? That green layer is what? That is layer of algae, another microscopic organism. Now this algae reproduces by fragmentation. Now what happens to the body of algae? Let's say this is body of algae and it is a parent. It is asexual reproduction, so only one parent is involved. Now to its body it will do what? It will break its body into two or more parts, two or more fragments. Let's say its body is divided into three parts, three fragments. Now each fragment will grow into a new individual. So out of one parent algae, we are getting how many new offsprings? Three fragments. So this process is known as fragmentation. Is it clear what is fragmentation? During fragmentation, an individual breaks into pieces called fragments. Each of these fragments gives rise to a new individual. Example, Spirogyra, a green algae having ribbon-like structure, is best studied example of fragmentation. Then third type of asexual reproduction is spore formation. You have seen now a bread after a few days unutilized, a white greenish layer is formed on the surface of bread. That is what? That is fungi. Again another microscopic organism. Fungi and plants like moss, ferns, they all reproduce through spore formation. Now what happens in spore formation? Let's say this is a fern. These are leaves of fern. Small dots are present and these small dots are known as spores. Now these spores are very light in weight, so with the flow of wind they float in the air and they reaches new place, and when these spores they are buried in the soil, they grow into a new plant, and that is how this fungi, moss, ferns are reproducing by spore formation. Reproduction in fungi is a well studied example of spore formation. Certain plants such as ferns and mosses reproduce by spore formation. Now these are spore formation in fern. The black spots which you can see, these are spores. These are actually outer covering which protects the spore from the harsh weather conditions, and spores are present inside these black shells. Another method of asexual reproduction is vegetative propagation. Now it is of two types, natural and artificial. Now which vegetative parts did I told you right now? There are three vegetative parts: roots, stem and leaves. So if these parts are involved in reproduction, then we call it as vegetative propagation or vegetative reproduction. Now another type of vegetative propagation is artificial. In artificial there is involvement of humans. Now types of artificial vegetative propagation is cutting. Now in cutting what happens? Let's take example of rose plant. If you will, let's say this is stem of rose. If you cut this stem of rose and you will bury that stem in the soil, then it will grow into a new plant of rose. So that is cutting. We are cutting the stem and we are burying it in the soil. Another artificial method is grafting. In this what we do? We take two plants and it happens in mango and apple trees. This is stem. This is stem of one plant. We will take stem of another plant and we will insert this stem into this part. We will make a cut here and we will insert this stem at this place, and then we will tie it with rope or thread. We will tie it with rope or thread, and after few days it will develop into a new plant. And this rooted stem is known as stalk and this part is known as scan. So in grafting, scan is inserted into stalk. And last is layering. Name suggests in layering we make layers. Let's say this is any tree and you have seen branches coming out of the tree. Then what we do? We bend the branch of this tree without cutting it. We will not cut it and we will bury it in the soil. Now it will get water, sunlight, nutrients, and it will develop into a new plant. This is layering and it happens in the plant of jasmine. What parts? Roots, stems and leaves. It is of two types, natural and artificial. This is naturally vegetative propagation can occur through roots like in case of carrot, through stems in case of potato. You have seen that there are so many eyes are present on potato. Those eyes are known as means those spots are known as eyes, and if you will cut that one eye and you will bury that in the soil, then it will grow into a new plant of potato. Then leaves, these are leaves of bryophyllum plant. As you can see, small buds are here on the corners of leaf. So if these buds fall down, then they grow into a new plant of bryophyllum. So here comes your first internal question, which you have to write on page 138. Name the common methods of asexual reproduction. Answer is budding, fragmentation, spore formation and vegetative propagation. Now another method of reproduction is sexual reproduction, in which two parents are involved, male and female. So when both the parents are required to produce an offspring, such reproduction is called sexual reproduction. And tell me, which part of plant is reproductive part? That is flower. Flower is reproductive part of a plant. Look at the structure of flower. This is flower. Now it has 4 parts. That flower has 4 parts. First, sepal. Second, petals. Third, androecium. And fourth, gynoecium. Sepal, petal, androecium and gynoecium. Another name for androecium is stamen, and another name for gynoecium is pistil. These are one and the same thing. Now this androecium is male reproductive part. In sexual reproduction, 2 parents are involved, so this is the male reproductive part, androecium, and gynoecium is female reproductive part. Understood? 4 parts of flower. Flowers are the reproductive organs of plant which have male and female reproductive parts. Now this is the label diagram of a flower. The green structure is sepal. The leaves, the colorful leaves which you can see, it is known as petal. Now the third one is male reproductive part, which is androecium, or we call it stamen. This is stamen. Here you can see these are stamen, and the fourth part was pistil, female reproductive part, gynoecium, pistil. This is the in the middle, which you can see this long green part, this is female reproductive part. Now stamen has 2 parts. This is anther, the top part, and this long tube-like is filament. Now this anther contains, inside this anther, so many pollen grains are present. Pollen grains are present, and inside these pollen grains, male gametes are present, which are actually involved during reproduction. This is structure of stamen. Now look here in the figure. Where is stamen? Here you can see this is this red part, it is anther, and this long yellow line which you can see is filament. And where are pollen grains present? Inside this anther, and pollen grains contain male gamete. Now we will discuss the female reproductive part, which is pistil. This is structure of pistil. The top part is known as stigma. This long tube is known as style, and this is ovary. And inside this ovary, so many ovules are present. These are ovules. And inside these ovules, female gamete is present, which is egg. Eggs are present inside these ovules. These are parts of female reproductive parts. Now, I have flower with me. Let's look here, the parts of flower. The first one which I told you was sepal. Can you tell me which part is sepal? This green part. This is sepal. And these leaves, colorful red leaves, this is petals. So many petals, 5 petals are here. Then we will talk about male and female reproductive part. In the middle, okay, let's look here first. You can see so many yellow spots and pink lines. These are androecium or stamen. This yellow thing is anther and this pink pipe is filament. Okay. Now in the middle, the top part is stigma. Then you can see a thick long tube like structure. This is style. And here at the bottom, ovary is not directly visible. So I am tearing this flower. This is inside it. This is ovary. This is ovary, and inside this ovary what is present? Ovules. So that was all parts of flower. Now types of flowers. There are 2 types of flower, unisexual flower and bisexual flower. Unisexual, those flowers in which only one parent is present, either father or mother, or we can say either male parts or female part. That flower is known as unisexual. Uni means single. Flowers in which either male parts are present or female. Another type of flower is bisexual. Bi means, this bi means not that goodbye, bi is 2. Those flowers in which both male reproductive parts and female reproductive parts are present. Like the flower which I have shown you right now, that was bisexual because it was having both male reproductive parts and female reproductive parts. Flowers that have either of the 2 reproductive parts in them are known as unisexual flowers. Example, flowers of papaya, cucumber, corn, these are unisexual flowers. And bisexual examples are flowers of mustard, rose, petunia. These all are examples of bisexual flowers. Okay, this is structure of pollen grain. As I told you, pollen grains are present inside anther, and inside these pollen grains you can see 2 dots. These are male gametes which are involved in reproduction. And here you can see this is ovary. Inside ovary ovules are present, and inside ovule eggs are present. In sexual reproduction, male and female gametes fuse to form a zygote. Fusion is important, fusion of male gamete and female gamete. Now next topic is pollination. This is not balloon. Now male gametes are present inside anther and female gametes are present here inside ovary, and to reproduce, fusion of male gamete with female gamete is required. But they are not present near each other, they are far from each other. So there must be any process by which male gamete can travel through, to the female gamete. So that process of transferring male gamete to the female gamete is known as pollination, in which what happens? There is transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma. These pollen grains are transferred to stigma, and this process is known as pollination. Understood what is pollination? Transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma. Now how it takes place? Is there any medium by bus, train or aircraft? No. So there are few agents which are involved in pollination, and those agents are known as pollinating agents. Pollinating agents. And what are those agents? Insects. Insects helps in pollination. How? You have seen that flowers are very attractive. They are of different colors. So when, let's say this is any flower. So when any insects sit on the flower, the pollen grains which are present on this flower, those pollen grains get stuck to the feet of these insects. Now when these insects fly and they sit on another flower, so their feet carries pollen grains, so they will transfer those pollen grains from this flower to the another flower on which they will sit. So this is how insects are responsible for pollination. Another agents are wind. With the flow of wind, then water. In aquatic plants, pollination by water, pollinating agent is water, and birds also helps in pollination. So these are few pollinating agents. Okay, wait. The transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma is called pollination. Now it is of two types, self-pollination and cross-pollination. Self-pollination, the kind of pollination where pollens are transferred from the anther to the stigma of the same flower, is called self-pollination, and this type of pollination is possible in bisexual flowers only. Now what does it mean? What is self-pollination? Self means on itself, by our own self. We can do this by our own. So let's say this is any plant and these are flowers. If this flower is bisexual, then it will be carrying both parts, male and female reproductive parts. So if the pollination is happening on the same flower or from this flower to the another flower, the same plant, then that type of pollination is known as self-pollination. Means either on that same flower or flower of the same plant, that is self-pollination. And what is cross-pollination? The another type of pollination is cross-pollination. In this, what happens? This is one plant and flowers. This is another plant. So in this, pollination occurs from anther, means the pollen grains transfer from this plant to the flower of another plant. Now two plants are involved here, so that type of pollination is known as cross pollination. Understood this topic? So the kind of pollination where pollens are transferred from anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower is called cross pollination. pollination and fertilization. Now write remaining internal question, question number 2 on page 139. Name the male reproductive part of a flower, and answer is androecium. Then question number 3 on page 140. Name 2 plants in which pollination is brought about by birds, and answer is pomegranate and kadam tree. Now second term is fertilization. Pollen grains transferred to stigma of another flower. Okay, now what will happen? We know that to fertilize, fusion of male gamete with female gamete is required. So how that fusion will take place? Now this is stigma, style and ovary. Now this stigma has received these pollen grains here, but eggs, the female reproductive cells are present here. So what will happen? These pollen grains, they will develop a tube here on the side, this tube, or let's say these pollen grains will develop a tube which is known as pollen tube, and this pollen tube will carry pollen grains from upper side to here, because eggs are present, so here fusion will take place. Because now pollen grains, the male gametes have reached to the female gamete and fertilization will take place. So this is what actually happening. First pollination happened, transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma of another flower. Then it will grow a pollen tube which will carry pollen grains from stigma to the ovary where female reproductive parts are present, the female gamete is present. Fusion will take place, means fusion of male gamete and female gamete, and what will produce? Zygote. So it is shown here. You can see the thin line present inside style. This is pollen tube which is carrying anther, and here ovules are present which will fuse with those pollen grains and it will develop a zygote. Now formation of fruits and seeds. After fertilization, ovary ripens into fruit while other flower parts wither. By this what we mean? Now fertilization has taken place here, so what will this ovary become? It will develop into fruit which we eat. That ovary develops into fruits, and inside ovary what is present? Ovule which develops into seed, and this seed contains embryo, that zygote. Okay, I told you zygote is formed here, so this zygote will develop into embryo and that is present inside seed. That is why we have seen that when we eat fruit and when we throw those seeds in the soil, then after few days a new plant grows from that part. Why? Because that seed contains embryo. So this is how formation of fruits and seeds takes place. Now you have seen that same type of plant are present at different places. If any particular plant is present here, then it will be available at the another place also. So how is this happening? Who is carrying those plants from one place to another? That is by the process seed dispersal. The transfer of seeds from one place to another is called seed dispersal. Dispersal of seed is necessary to prevent overcrowding of the seeds if you know that to grow, seed requires proper water, sunlight, space, nutrients. So if at the one place, if we will throw so many seeds, so there will be competition among seeds. If I will give you one chocolate to distribute among 20 students, so there will be competition between you, okay. So that's how, that is why seed dispersal is important. Another condition, another reason is for wider distribution of plants. Plants are distributed evenly on the places. If one plant is present here, then it will be present at another place also. Agents of seed dispersal: wind, water, bursting, animals. These all are agents of seed dispersal. Agents means they are carrying this process, they are helping in seed dispersal. Like the seeds of many plants are very light, so with the flow of wind they float in air. Same goes with water, aquatic plants, the seeds of aquatic plants, they flow with water. Bursting, like plant of pea, after ripening it bursts, and after bursting those seeds, those peas, they go to different places and a new plant is developed there. And by animals, like even we also and animals, we eat fruit and then we throw the seeds and we don't know the outcome, but after few days a new plant grows there. So that is how these all are agents of seed dispersal. So that was all about chapter 12. Thank you.